Hey mi gente, it's Junie and Steve. You already know my name, but if you are new here, hey! Today we're going to be talking and starting off the video with a definition. What is a preference? According to Merriam-Webster, a preference is 5. Offensive sexual preference. Usage of preference. The term preference, as used to refer to sexual orientation, is widely considered offensive in its implied suggestion that a person can choose who they are sexually or romantically attracted to. We're going to be talking about preferences and why preferences is problematic, especially in black spaces, black dating spaces. Enjoy. Before anyone comments this, yes, I am wearing the same t-shirt from the previous video. Yes, it is clean, but I chose to not change my outfit. Instead, I just chose to put my cardigan on. Okay, now that we move on from that rant or whatever, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a fan of the term preference. I never was, and the reason why is because people from all types of backgrounds, all ethnicities, all races, all cultures, be using this term to be excluding people within the dating pool. And I've noticed that it be people excluding people within their own race, your own culture, ethnicity, and whatever in betweens. And we're gonna talk a bit more about my opinion, but also, of course, I'm gonna go into more research, and I'm going to have guests. I do want to make sure that I mention this right here, right now. This video is going to be focused heavily on black and mixed with black people. This video is not going to be about everyone because I already made a poll and everyone chose for black and mixed with black people. There are some black people and mixed with black people who be using the excuses of their upbringing, who they associate with, or insert a stereotype about certain people within the community as to why they do not date them, they do not want to be their friends, but then they will date the most ratchet non-black person, which doesn't make sense because they want to be stereotypically a black or mixed with black person, but to each on its own. Then there are people who just make excuses about why they wouldn't date black or mixed with black people because of them not being educated enough, them living in the hood, stereotypes basically. And they think this is a fact, and it's not a fact. It makes you look like a self-hating Negro. I'm gonna be honest, it really does. And then these are the same people who be complaining about their children not being fully black or half black. I am going to read a quote from Manissa Mandinka right now. Manissa Mandinka states, "Maybe you own your preference for people of a certain race to the fact that they made up the majority of the population where you grew up. Even then," Bug says, "there's room to question how you developed this preference. Unless you lived in your childhood neighborhood, your settings, and therefore your potential partners, have changed over time. If you feel more comfortable dating members of this racial group, investigate why." As Melissa stated, if you do not live in that type of environment right now, or if you, let's just say there's like a few black or mixed with black people within your spaces, but you chose to go to only non-black people. That's suspicious. Why are you going to only go to non-black people? Yeah, there are no excuses. I'm sorry. And I know there are going to be people who are going to be like, you don't know how I grew up. You don't know my proximity to blackness. Da da da. No excuses. Just say it. You do not want to date black or mixed with black people because of your unintentional or intentionally biased opinions on black people or mixed with black people.
I think generally how preference is being used is prejudice and comes from like a lot of biases. I think sometimes it can stem from self-hate, whether it or like trauma responses. So a lot of times I've heard like black men say, you know, they saw their mother suffer and because of how she looked, you know, like people attach that to suffering. Even people like Kodak Black, he said dark-skinned women are too tough. We're too tough. So to me, that for him to be a Haitian American, he's probably seen a lot of women who were dark-skinned Haitians suffer. And so he probably didn't see femininity in that. And so that can attribute to biases because there are plenty of dark-skinned women who are feminine. There are light-skinned women who are feminine and who aren't feminine. So again, preference in that context, I don't think is healthy. I've also heard black men say things like, well, if we're thinking about giving our children a better life, we should procreate with someone who is white. And they haven't been as blatant in it. Some have, but on the premise of it, that's been the context. Like biracial children, you know, they're more sought after, and that's very problematic too, to like operationalize a child in that manner. But I think overall preference, how it's used in today's terms, and to not really valuing character but how someone physically looks, I think in that sense it should be abolished, or that like meaning and feelings behind it we should deter from that.
It's essentially almost like a dog whistle at this point, where unfortunately I hear mostly come from black men, where we are referring to a particular countenance, a particular complexion, a particular hair texture, a particular ethnicity and persuasion, typically lighter skin, and I think like a great deal of the stereotypes of preference, because preference has also now become so canonical that people, especially black women and femmes, now refer to the preferences as it's a type of person now. Like it's grown, it's taken on a life of its own now. It's almost like a meme. So like when you see a black man with a white woman or a black man with a Latina, and by Latina, we're talking about mestizo looking, you know, word back to the anti-blackness video of Latino in the Latino community. But we're referring to like a particular mixed mestizo looking exotical, is probably another dog whistle. So you have, it's twofold. So when it comes to preferences, it is real. It's an extension of colorism, black men participating in colorism where they are exercising their prejudices, their anti-blackness in many cases, their internalized anti-blackness, and purposefully procuring and seeking out suitors and women and femmes that are lighter skin, particular body proportions, the IG model, that, you know, the Brittany Renners, the Amber Roses, the, you know, all of these types, we could go on and on. And it's typically used in contrast also with them saying, and by black men, they're also not only going for particular preferences, but they're also denigrating black women in the process. So darker skinned black women, or women with features that don't resemble the preferences, they're doing that in the process. So it's not only that black men are dating white women in these cases, and, you know, because that's fine, like you could date whoever you want to date, but they're also specifically seeking them out, only seeking them out, and in the process shitting on darker skinned black women, typically those that look just like their mothers, ironically. Now darker skinned black women have also weaponized this language and internalized this language, and they've weaponized it to say that black men are going for this particular preference, and they're also coming at the preferences as well. So anytime like when a mixed a mixed black woman, mixed by meaning, you know, black and white, or like Blasian, or you know, all kind of mixtures. They basically, by they I mean darker skinned black women, will talk about that mixed woman or lighter skinned black woman in a derogatory fashion by virtue of the fact that they are upheld in society due to white supremacy, due to anti-blackness, which is not their fault. You know, it's not their fault that they're mixed, or that they're, you know, they have these intersections, or that they're light skin, or different eye colors, or have like different hair textures. But you have like this side of the internet. I hate to call on them, but the divestment community, you know, I'm sorry, but like it's like, yeah, like a lot of these channels are also weaponizing this language, and instead of it being like an awareness type of thing, like bringing awareness and calling out the prejudice, they are doing just as much prejudice.
I think the word preference in dating could be prejudice depending on how somebody uses it. Someone might say like the reason why they prefer to date a certain race or ethnicity, and then they might follow it up with prejudice or discriminatory things about another group of people. So in that case, it could be prejudice. I think most words you have to use discernment to figure out how people are using it. So I would say, you know, most words have some flexibility on the definition based on the context.
At some point, men or women will say, like, I like blank type of girl, or I like blank type of guy. But I think when those like blanks are filled with things like black or white or Latina, that's when I think it can be prejudice. And a lot of people mask like prejudice through preferences. Stay woke.
Yes, it is. I don't think people are aware of how much their preferences are seeped in bias. I like to say that preferences are usually created based on what you are adverse to, what you do not like, what you hate. I also think preference also allows other people to know your politics, right? Who you feel is worthy of care, who you feel is worthy of love, who shouldn't be harmed. All of that stuff is tied in preference, and that is why I think preference definitely is used to express your prejudices against people.
In my opinion, when I think of preference, I think of exclusion. Petrini Ira states, "We must remember that society is embedded in racism. Moreover, colorism, featureism, and texturism manifest themselves in various areas, and that includes dating preferences. So, what has happened within our community is that because of societal conditioning, whiteness is on top, as we know. However, when it comes to dating preferences in black men, the preference in a person is someone who has somewhat proximity to whiteness. Therefore, within our race, women with that proximity are put on top and fetishized, and women who don't resemble that proximity are immediately put down. When it comes to exclusion within dating in the black community, this includes featureism, colorism, and texturism. And this is just a few things. There are other reasons, like people being short, people being fat, people being too skinny, people being insert a different type, whatever. It's a mess. And sure, every community has their own issues, but we're not talking about every community. We're talking about the black community in this video. Then there are self-hating folks, or folks within the community who fetishize certain types of black people and or non-black people, or fetishize having mixed race children, which we're going to be talking about in part 2 of this video series. Back in September 2022, actor John Boyega happened to showcase his love for black women in an interview with Shia the God.
Now you speak about your blackness quite a lot, and then obviously I've seen your interview, so I'm like, let me just check that.
Make sure he's.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, that's real though.
Yeah.
I judge brothers like that too.
I'm not judging. I mean, anyone can do what they need to do, but I feel like when you speak in a certain way,
black men got to be with black women.
Yeah. When you spoken in that way,
yes.
I'm like, let me just check my man's devoted at home.
I'm with you. People that talk so black, but then they sleep white, I'm like, ugh.
Well, have you ever dated a white woman?
Yeah, I have once. I dated one once.
How did that go?
When I was younger. Yeah, it was alright, but we were just chilling. You know what I mean? It wasn't nothing serious like that. So, but naturally, you know.
Could you bring a stormtrooper home?
Stormtrooper. I've said it openly. It's just a preference. Like I like my women black. You know, and I feel like that. It's just they fine as hell. They, you know, melanin levels got to be over 75%. You know what I mean? Thickness got to be there. Style got to be there. We got to laugh at the same jokes. We got to bump to the same music. It's just got to be a flow.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
This interview became a controversial topic at that, because people were mad that a black male actor specifically, was praising black women, especially dark-skinned black women. And apparently it was discriminatory of some sort for excluding non-black women in the equation.
I don't think anyone is wrong for preferring someone of their same race. I think that you just don't hear it as much, especially nowadays with black men saying, you know, that everything is wrong with black women. There's so many things wrong with black women. To hear someone, a black man, a dark-skinned black man say that is just like shocking to a lot of people, and especially for him to be a celebrity. Now, I know a lot of women thought he was pandering, and he may have been pandering. But again, I think it is very natural to like someone of the same race for various reasons, especially if you like how you look, if you appreciate your culture. A lot of people try to find similarities with people of the same race, because a lot of times when you date outside of your culture or your race or even, you know, ethnic group, a lot of times there are problems that arise. So there are people, like even Ghanaians have told me, they have to, you know, marry within their tribe. And that's because, you know, culturally it's really hard to like date or marry out.
I've seen John Boyega in like a bunch of different movies and media, most notably like Woman King, and that was a movie predominantly, in fact, in its totality, him surrounded with black women. You had what's her name? Jesus Christ, it's escaping me. Viola Davis right now. You had so many black women in there, and the whole thing in general was just an ode to black womanhood, which is great, performative sometimes, but it's great. But as it pertains to John Boyega and him openly, publicly stating that he exclusively courts and couples with black women, and making that indistinguishably clear, can be a number of things. It could be very well him expressing his preferences, without not preferences trademark, not preferences TM, but his preferences is actual the word. Or it could be him understanding his demographic, understanding that there is a demand for actors and people in the spotlight who are black men. There's a demand for black men publicly showing affection to black women, because there's a dearth in that. As you noted, there is a trend amongst the industry of black men marrying or coupling or courting with non-black women or racially ambiguous black women. And the same goes for this situation here with non-black women and black women. If a black man says that I exclusively date black women, that is not the same thing as a black man saying I exclusively date non-black women. Because on the first half, when a black man says that he dates only non-black women, so if a black man comes out and say, I only date white women, then you are upholding white supremacy. You are upholding the subjugation and historical denigration of dark-skinned black women when you do that. However, when a black man says that he only dates black women, you are trying to agitate that status quo, agitate the fact that historically black women have been denigrated by saying that I only date black women, and what isn't being said is because I find them desirable, and I find them so desirable to the point where I only spend time dating them. When you say that in a white supremacist society, in a very patriarchal society that has constantly denigrated black women being at the lowest rung of the ladder in the dating pool, in the exotic pool, they are least chosen on dating profiles, there is a concerted effort to make black women feel less desirable. Because that's dating back to the transatlantic slave trade, because it's easier to make you be malleable if you feel like you have no worth. One of those worths, especially when it comes to women, is desirability. So in the case of black women, they have this chip on their shoulder, and rightfully so. John Boyega saying that he only dates black women is a statement against white supremacy. And in cases when black men with that type of light say that they date white women or they date non-black women, that is a statement in support of white supremacy.
No, I don't think he's wrong. His reasoning is a reasoning that most people would say if you ask them why they prefer to date it within their race or their culture. Because I think John Boyega is more so speaking to culture as well, because not every black partner that he would find would give him the kind of response he was later saying. He wants a partner that understands, he wants a partner that will understand certain grievances like black men and women could have experiencing racism. He wants a partner that listens to the same type of music as him. Not all black people listen to the same type of music. So I think across the board, most people will date within their culture and their race and their ethnicity for those reasons. But yeah, his answer is pretty standard.
John Boyega is a black man, so to me, ain't nothing wrong with him saying that he like black women, as he should. As he should. I would have felt a way if he was like, I only date white women. Then I'm looking at you the corner of your eyes like, who hurt you? Because sometimes black men have categorized all black women as angry and a certain type of women, and not all black women are the same. So, and that's what I think when men be like, oh, I only date a certain type of woman, I don't date black women. They either got hurt by a black woman or they just have this perceived notion of what a black woman is. But to me, that's crazy, because if your mama black, why wouldn't you want to date a black woman? Why?
I feel like I did see a clip going around a couple of months ago of John Boyega saying that he only dates black women. I don't think it's wrong for him to say, because politically, black women aren't the preference. Black women aren't the top pick. So I think it is political for him to say, I only date black women. Because like I said, your preference is also tied to a politic. And for him to say that, he wants to boldly let it be known that his preference is black women, and that's who he's going to advocate for, that's who he's going to love, that's who he's going to care for, that's who he's going to rally behind. And I think that is important, because if we look at the realm of desirability, black women are not high on that. So it's very different than if a black man says, I'm only dating white women. That's very different, because the power structure already aligns with white women. So you're not doing anything political or revolutionary by stating that. You're really just using that as a way to separate yourself from black people, whereas John Boyega is making a point to say that he is connected to us. You gotta keep Charlemagne out of the rotation, friend. Julian.
In my opinion, the outrage was dumb and not necessary. There are so many issues out there, and for you to be mad that a black man does not prefer to date non-black women in his dating is ridiculous. Logically, a black man should be willing to date black women because he's a black man. But also, it makes logical sense. Of course, as a black person, you're gonna logically prefer to date a black person or a mix with black person. It makes sense. Just like how there are white men who only date white women, same thing applies to black men, or same thing applies to Asian men only dating Asian women, or non-black Latinos dating non-black Latinos. Ding ding ding. I do not understand people. Some folks love to pick and choose whether to be outraged, and in this case this was so not necessary, but I wouldn't be surprised because people are pressed when black people do not see them as like a preference. Hate the word, but this is a very about preferences, well, so we're going to mention it. And the people within the community defending this nonsense, you're a part of the problem. This is why we have these issues within our community. We love trying to make other people, specifically non-black people, comfortable and feeling entitled to our desire, or us preferring them over our own people within our dating. I do want to acknowledge that it is rare for a black male celebrity to acknowledge black women, especially dark-skinned black women, publicly. So for John Boyega to do that, I give him applause, and I could tell he genuinely means it. To start off this section, I want to read a quote from Orville Lloyd Douglas' article titled "Why I Hate Being a Black Man." He states, "There is also a fear by some black people that discussing the issue of self-hatred is a sign of weakness. There is a discourse that black is beautiful, but the truth is, the image of blackness is ugly. At least it's perceived that way. There is nothing special or wonderful about being a black male. It is a life of misery and shame." Self-hating is a huge issue in the black community, and I empathize with Douglas to some extent, especially as a black man in Canada. I do not know the experience because I'm not from Canada, but I am from New York City, specifically the Bronx, and I was born and raised in the Bronx, so I can empathize a bit with him with the exclusion, racism. But one thing I can say about myself is that I never hated to be black. I love being black. And sure, we all have bits and pieces of when we do not like certain things about our blackness, but to hate everything is wild, extremely wild. So I do find that concerning, in my opinion, that Douglas has self-hating issues, and he's not the only one within the community. He's not the only one. I do have family members who are definitely self-hating. Some of them are close a bit. Some of them are further out of the family. But I just wanted to put that out there.
And I think that self-hate does stem back from like slavery. And I really believe in Joyce DeGruy's operationalizing of post-traumatic slave syndrome. The only kind of like when we talk about Reconstruction and they were like, well, what do we do with all these Negroes in America now that they're free? I think society in general didn't know or care on how black people moved. And a lot of times we had to find out, how do we keep moving? So when you keep trying to build or move on from one trauma or one experience experience to the next, it becomes very overwhelming. And I think that a lot of times our parents, our ancestors, friends, families, we just haven't really learned how to maximize our health, our greatness a lot of times. And, I just feel like it's a bunch of trauma really built in upon us that has caused us to hate ourselves. And I think that there are a lot of people, activists, professionals, everyday commoners who try to be kind, who try to love themselves, try to love each other. And I think that journey towards self-love and, figuring out how can we contribute to Black community, how can we contribute to our families, ourselves as individuals, something we're still trying to find out.
Self-loathing is, for Black people in particular, self-loathing for Black people is essentially just anti-Blackness. It's internalizing the white supremacist framework that we were born into, that we have endured, that we have been chattel slavery, Jim Crow, all of these different instances of Black subjugation. Has a effort been made to essentially make you, the Black person, feel inferior? That is a historical campaign that is as old as time itself. Essentially, when you see that happening nowadays in Black people themselves, where it's very subtle, it could be something as overt as Black people saying, I don't like hanging around Black people, or I feel too white for Black people, or I don't do it could be as simple as that, or very overt as that, or it could be something totally nuanced and subtle, which is as you say, you only date non-white people, or you perm your hair to the point where you devoid yourself of whatever Black features that you have, such as your curly hair, your crinkly hair, whatever. Overt methods like bleaching one's skin, that's big in Jamaica right now, that's big in a lot of different places. Literally trying to take the melanin away from yourself. Those are forms of self-loathing as a Black individual. It's internalized anti-Blackness. And essentially, it's a very tragic thing because it is a manifestation of white supremacy winning. It's internal, and it happens with every Black person. They can either keel or kneel and genuflect to white supremacy and find ways to lessen their Blackness, minimize their Blackness. They do that by dressing a particular way that is canonically associated with white supremacist ideals. They can move themselves out of proximity to Blackness. So when you see a lot of Black people trying to get out of the hood, which is fine in some cases for self-survival, but when you find yourself, you don't do anything in regards to the hood, you don't engage with any Black people in your day-to-day, your children ain't seeing Black people, they go to all white schools. These are manifestations of anti-Blackness, of self-loathing as Black individuals, and it happens every day. In fact, it is more common than not common. It is more common and more mainstream to self-loathe as a Black person rather than to be extremely proud of your Blackness to the point where you live in your Blackness. And even being extremely proud of your Blackness can get toxic after a while, because you have Hoteps, you have your Dr. Umars, who will basically say, you have even Marcus Garvey's, who's a very complicated figure, but at the same time, he was also heinous in his own regard, where basically you will have people thinking that Black is superior, which is, of course, not a good thing either,
I think self-hating in the Black community is something that, of course, is going to have to be rectified or remedied across centuries, honestly. And we know why it started: white supremacy, colonization. But I would be curious to know in what ways self-hating or insecurity came up in a variety of people before colonization, just to get some more insight on the root causes of it, if any of it is somewhat natural to the human emotion, but for different reasons. People could self-hate for different reasons, but in this case, people are self-hating due to internalized anti-Blackness. If we realize how deep anti-Blackness is, sometimes you also have to be kind of patient a little bit with some people who are experiencing internalized anti-Blackness and how that comes up as self-hate. Some people could be well aware of their internalized anti-Blackness and they don't care. You know, some people might not get it. You have to take time to teach them. So I think it's really case by case. And then, of course, some people could be, especially if we see like self-hating within Black people in the mainstream media, that could also be some sort of like ploy to conjure up drama and discourse. I think when things are in the mainstream media, we have to be like really intentional of not letting that like drain our energy. For example, recently in Love is Blind season 4, where there was a contestant, Kwame, who a lot of people were talking about on the internet for self-hating. And I personally didn't participate in that discourse because from the few clips that we saw, I think people were being really harsh on somebody without really like approaching it with empathy and curiosity first before like bashing someone. Because like, how dare you have internalized anti-Blackness or self-hate as if that is that person's fault. So it depends. I'm all for dragging somebody if it's necessary, but sometimes I feel like we use too much of our energy that could be going towards other things.
I think self-hating is a big issue in the Black community, and I blame like society and freaking like different cultural messages that often like promote just a narrow standard of what beauty and pure value is. Like for so long, like Black women have been tormented about like the way that they look. Their butts are too big, they too small, they this, they that, they lips too big. And now those things are being hip, right? I remember being like a young girl and like having just body image issues. Why did I have body image issues? Because of the people who I was around. They would tell me, oh, well, you're too this to say that you're a Black girl, or you have this kind of hair because you're a Black girl. And that does take a toll on you, and you do kind of unintentionally start to build self-hate. Obviously, I'm older now. I've learned to love myself, but society and like media does play a huge part, especially in like young girls. Like I have little cousins that I look at as my little siblings, and I would hate for them to come to me one day and say like, oh my God, like somebody bullied me and said that I don't have like a bigger bust or something like that. And it doesn't matter, first of all. Like, you are who you are and you're beautiful as that. But yes, self-hate is a big issue, but I think it's an issue only because of just like society in media.
Ooh, child. I can't relate. Thankfully, I can't relate. But anti-Blackness does show up in a lot of different ways. And I think that everyone has a degree of self-hate. It's no way you can't. There's no way to escape from that because of all of the layers of marginalization and all of the systems that we live in. But there are folks who vocalize it and are doing no work to dismantle whatever anti-Blackness, Black hate, however you want to package it and call it. There are people who are content with not doing the work and adhering to white supremacist structures, and honestly, those people should just stay away from me. I don't know if they care to love themselves. Some people just have to be left behind, and I'm okay with leaving behind Black people who hate themselves, Black people who do not see the value in themselves. I don't know. I don't have the capacity to help those people. I will be 100% honest. But I do care enough to hope that they get the care that they need to get through that anti-Blackness.
Sure. We all have our insecurities, as I've stated previously. But sometimes you have to just figure out why you think this way, how you think this way, talk to your family, close friends, and get an idea of what is going on with you, because hating yourself is not going to help. And hating your own race is not helping you not one bit. And these type of people scare me within the black community, because then they end up having mixed race children, and then the mixed race children end up disliking black people as well. So people like this who extremely hate themselves is a problem. Edward Watson states, in fact, he was probably being painfully honest in his remarks. As someone who grew up with parents who always instilled pride in me and my siblings, I can honestly state that I have never resented the fact that I am black. Have I ever wondered what it would be like to be a member of another race? Yes, I have. Wood's piece is kind of interesting because I had to think about a time if I ever felt like that before on changing my race, like, imagining it, because I know he didn't directly say he wanted to change his race. It was more like he imagined if he did change his race. I'm going to be honest with you. I never thought of changing my race. Never. Have I ever thought of being light-skinned? Yes, I have. But I never thought about being white, Asian, non-black, Hispanic, or Latino, or insert any type of ethnicity, culture, or race. I never thought about that. Light-skinned black man, or black boy, because I was a kid and a teenager, because this was during my middle school years, and I think it was because of what I went through at middle school and always having to explain my identity to people and about why I'm black but my parents are from Honduras, things like that, and explain to people about my Latin American heritage, but people do, not believing me because I am black, which is why I ended up lying about my background sometimes when I was in middle school. Improvement as an adult, and a teenager and adult, because when I was in high school, I was more honest about my parents' background and my background. But it takes time. It takes time to embrace your identity or different parts of your identities, which is why I feel like Douglas could have done more things to embrace his blackness. Orville Douglas states, honestly, who would want to be black? Who would want people to be terrified of you and not want to sit next to you on public transportation? Who would want to have this dark skin, broad nose, large thick lips, and wake up in the morning being despised by the rest of the world? A lot of the time, I feel like my skin color is like my personal prison. Something that I have no control over. For what I am judged just because of the way I look. Feeling excluded because of your race does take a toll on you. I've experienced that. I experienced that at my job sometimes. I cannot go in detail because I still work at this job. I have felt like that at college. I have felt like that going on the bus, going on the train, when people were specifically white, and depending who, because it's rare when Asian people or non-black Latinos do this to me, but walk away or try to get away from me as possible when I'm on the train. But I do not take it personal. I of course it does bother me sometimes, but it's like, what am I gonna do? Cry? Like, why am I fiending to get the attention of non-black people? I have my people, my black people, who are willing to tolerate me. Of course, as long as I be a coon or do anything crazy, but willing to tolerate me, sit next to me, interact with me, and so on. Why am I going to be feeling for the validation of white people, Asian people, non-black Latinos, and so on? Why am I going to be feeling for that type of attention? It's sad to read things like this, but this is reality for some black people and mixed with black people within the community. I want to give grace. I want to be kind. I want to be understanding because we all have a similar story to some extent, just a tiny bit, because of course not all of us are a coon or self-hating as much as Douglas. Not trying to be disrespectful, but it's the truth. But we have to remember that there are people who are hurting within our community. We have to remember that.
I won't say that the word preference should be abolished per se, because it just depends on what we're talking about. So nowadays, when I hear the word preference, especially in like love or romantic contexts, it's always about the physical. And I think that that conversation should be looked at. Like if we're talking about physical preferences, how do we feel that way? Again, I think I spoke about earlier how a lot of, let's say, for example, black men, even black women, when they see trauma or they see unwanted, uncomfortable situations, you usually see it amongst people who aren't considered desirable. So a lot of times they look for comfort in people who are considered desirable. They want their children to be, quote unquote, beautiful. So I've heard black women say, I'm going to mate with this white person because I want my child to have blue eyes, or I want my child to have good hair. And black men say it too. I think that often black men, rejected more so, black men and black women often do marry out or date out because they want to be comfortable. You know, I'm country, I'm mixing up my words. But anyways, but if we're talking about preference, like I prefer someone who enjoys movies or who enjoys small settings, that's not wrong. When we're solely thinking about vanity, or we're thinking about, just how can I come up over the next person, I don't think that's necessarily good. And in that context, I think that the word preference should be abolished, really, evaluated, because it's not healthy. That's all.
Preference as it stands, sure, for sure. Preference as it's been co-opted as a term, it should definitely be abolished. However, having preferences, it's fine. You have proclivities to a particular, feature. Like some people like big butts, some people like big breasts, whatever. I think those are necessarily fine. However, at the same time, you want to get to a point like where you're not dating people for those specific things only, and you're only dating those people. If you find yourself in a situation where you do not date people based on like you will go throughout life and you refuse to date people based on particular characteristics, I think that you should probably examine those biases. Like if you for some reason will never date a person with red hair, just figure out why. Just try to figure out why. I'm not saying that you need to go and date people with red hair, because that's also harmful to them, the people with red hair, because you don't need to exercise your biases on those people. So I'm not saying go out and if you have preferences, then try to date people that do not fit those preferences, because that's just as harmful to them as well. But at the same time, I think it's just a matter of trying to reflect on why you do what you do. And that's a constant adventure and self-journey and exploration that I think everybody should go through. Why do you like big butts? Why do you like big breasts? Why do you only date white women? Ask yourself these questions and try to come to an understanding of one's biases. Love is complicated. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is everything. Apparently love is blind as well, but I don't know. It's a very difficult and nuanced phenomena that many people around the world and in the human condition go through. And I think it's worth looking into and investigating a bit before you do harm to not only others, but yourself in the process.
I think intra-community conversations are important. So if people are using preference privately, I feel like it's fine. If people are using it in the mainstream media to conjure up bad faith conversations, then I think that's unfortunate. I tend to kind of ignore any conversations that are talking about preferences. A lot of times in cisgender, straight, black women conversations, the word preference comes up and people are like talking about how like black men prefer like lighter skinned women and stuff like that. And I typically like scroll past that stuff nowadays because, you know, having these conversations into the mainstream void, I don't think is really doing anything. It's just for like engagement nowadays or whatever. But yeah, overall, I don't think it needs to be abolished because it's a word, depending on the context, that people could just be using to express themselves at that moment.
I mean, like I had said in like the earlier video, I think preferences are fine. They're not fine when you try to disguise like your racism or like your internal like issues. Like, why is it that, you know, somebody only wants to date like let's say a black guy only wants to date white women? That's odd, right? Like, I think that's odd. So you don't like black women? You're not gonna date black women? Your mama not black? Your daddy not black? Like, the math ain't mathing. So when it comes to things like that, then I'm like, but I think preferences, like, they're innocent up until that point. Up until that point. Don't tussle with me. That's my opinion.
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't care if the word is abolished because it'll just be replaced with another word. Abolishing the word will not do anything to dismantle the way in which people decide who they care for. That's how I see preference. Preference to me determines who you care for, who you think deserves love, who you think deserves community, who you think deserves safety. All of that stuff is tied into preference. So whether we remove the word or not, people are still going to dictate how they love on people, care for people, based on this idea of one person deserving it over another. So abolishing the word won't do anything. They will just replace it with something else, and we'll be doing a video about abolishing that word. I think what has to be abolished is the brainwashing that many of us have been influenced by, that feeds these preferences, that creates these biases, that makes us assume things of people based on how they look. We assume people's whole lives based on how they present to us, and it doesn't make sense. Like, we've moved past that, and I wish that society, like as far as society is concerned, that we can move past thinking preferences are harmless. I think all preferences are harmful. Even the preferences I have, I try to tackle them and interrogate them all the time. Well, why do I pick these kinds of friends? Why do I have these kinds of romantic partners? Why do I feel comfortable with these types of people? That in itself is also filled with preferences and biases that I've learned from the past, or biases that I've dismantled so that I can bring in things that I usually wouldn't bring in. So it's a tricky thing, but I believe that it can be dismantled, the biases and preferences. I don't think in my lifetime, but at least for me as a person, I'm trying my best to interrogate all of my preferences, see why they exist and where they come from, and see if it's because of a white supremacist patriarchal system that told me to prefer the things I prefer.
Thank you so much if you made this far in this video. I appreciate you. Be sure to like this video. Please comment, share, and if you are new or if you have not already, please subscribe and follow me on my Instagram and on my Depop. Yes, follow me there. Thank you. Also, check out all the creators who happen to guest star in this video. I appreciate each and every one of you for participating and helping me out tie this video well. I know a lot of folks want to hear your thoughts and or opinions. So I appreciate all of you for participating. Check out their work, everyone. It's amazing. Everything's going to be in the description. Part 2 is coming soon. And part 2 is going to be based more on preferences within dating non-black people. And then excluding black people within the dating history. And then there are going to be more things I'm going to talk about in the video. Like I've mentioned, it's in bits in this video. I'm still thinking about whether I'm going to have guests or not in that video. So stay tuned. Thank you. And
At this, y'all for listening. Bye.
Peace, mi gente. All right, good.
Thank you for having me on the channel, and peace, mi gente.
Peace, mi gente.
Thanks so much, Julian, for having me, thinking of me, including me. I figured I'd add this in the video too. Peace, mi gente. I hope I said that right, because I'm mad black.